They say some roads never forget, that the pavement remembers every scream, every drop of blood, and every final breath taken beneath its moonlit silence. Along Route 167, just outside of Ash Hollow, Kentucky, that silence hides something more. Something that waits. This is the Untold Trace, and I am your host. Tonight we explore a mystery older than memory, darker than folklore, and far more chilling than fiction. A story whispered by truckers, feared by locals, and captured by a camera that was never meant to record the unexplainable. This is the unsolved case of the ghostly hitchhiker. Jason Miller wasn't a man easily shaken. He'd driven through tornadoes in Kansas, snowstorms in Montana, and midnight deserts where the road seems to vanish into the black. But on October 11th, 2022, just past 11:40 p.m., something on Route 167 made him pull over and question everything he knew about what was real. Jason was tired, but not exhausted. He knew that stretch of road. He'd taken it a dozen times before. Quiet, rural, no real traffic past 9 p.m., just two lanes slicing through trees that pressed in too close. That night, the rain came suddenly, slamming against the windshield like fists, and that's when he saw her. Standing alone on the shoulder, barefoot, soaked to the bone, wearing a long white dress that clung to her skin. Her hair was dark, matted, her arm lifted, not waving, just held out, like she was asking, not begging, for help. Jason slowed. His first thought? Maybe she'd been in a wreck. Maybe she needed a phone. Maybe she was running from something. The truck rolled to a stop beside her. The passenger door unlocked. He leaned over, pushed it open, and watched as she climbed inside without saying a word. She sat perfectly still, head forward, hands in her lap. Her skin was pale, almost gray under the dashboard lights, and her feet were filthy. Jason asked where she was headed. She didn't answer. Instead, she whispered something so softly he barely heard it. "I never left." Jason blinked, turned toward her. But she was gone. Gone. No sound, no door slam, no trace of water on the seat where she'd been sitting. Just the steady beat of rain and the low hum of his engine. He pulled over, jumped out, opened the door wide, and scanned the empty road. Nothing. No footprints, no car, no signs of life or death. Just the forest, watching. The next morning, Jason brought the footage to the local sheriff's department. His dash cam had captured the moment he stopped. The door unlocking, the wind blowing in, him speaking to someone beside him, and yet no one was visible. No distortion, no trick of the light. Just him, talking to a ghost. Deputy Lawrence Coker didn't laugh it off. He looked at the time, the place, and something clicked. Ash Hollow had seen this before. Back in 1983, a college student named Lila Mae Dawson disappeared on that same road. Her car had broken down. A witness reported seeing her walking barefoot toward town in a white dress. She never made it. 2 weeks later, her body was found half a mile off the road, under an old pine tree. Her neck was broken. No signs of a struggle. Her arms were folded across her chest, like she'd been placed there. No fingerprints, no blood, no leads. The case was closed, but never solved. And over the decades, rumors grew. Locals talked about a girl in white who flagged down cars and then vanished mid-conversation. A young man swore she got into his truck in 1997 and disappeared at the same curb where Lila Mae was found. A woman driving alone in 2006 claimed she picked up a soaked hitchhiker who asked, "Can you take me home?" only to vanish before the next mile marker. Every story, the same. Every victim, alone. Every sighting, just before or after heavy rain. Always near mile marker 237. Jason's footage was the first hard proof. And it terrified people. Ash Hollow wasn't a place for ghost stories. It was a town of factory workers, farmers, and faith. But once the footage made the rounds, old memories resurfaced. People who'd stayed silent for decades came forward. A retired trooper said he'd seen her twice in the 90s, but never spoke about it. A woman who worked night shifts at a diner swore she once served coffee to a girl matching Lila Mae's description, only to find the bill unpaid and the chair still wet long after she vanished. But here's where it gets darker. Because back in 1983, there was a man. His name was Everett Kane, a maintenance worker at Lila's college, a quiet loner. He lived just 3 miles from where her body was discovered. At the time, he had no alibi, but no evidence linked him to the murder. Rumors followed him until he left town in 1985. In 2022, 2 days after Jason's encounter, someone tried to access Everett's sealed personnel files from the local archives. That person? Never identified. Whoever it was, knew what they were looking for. So what are we dealing with here? A restless spirit seeking justice? A warning to future victims? Or something darker? Something not just haunting, but hunting? Is it possible that Lila's story was never about folklore, but a cover-up? A hidden crime buried beneath 3 decades of silence, retold through screams no one could hear, except those brave enough to stop? Jason Miller hasn't taken Route 167 since that night. He left the trucking business 6 months later. Says the roads don't feel safe anymore. Not because of other drivers, but because of the things you can't explain. The things that stare back from the passenger seat. The things that remember. This isn't just a ghost story. It's a trail of evidence. A call for answers. A voice that never stopped whispering. And we're just getting started. It began with Lila Mae Dawson, 1983. She was last seen walking barefoot down Route 167 after her car stalled during a lightning storm. Eyewitnesses described a girl with long dark hair, wearing a white sundress, drenched in the rain, shivering, invisibly distraught. She waved at a passing vehicle that never stopped. 2 weeks later, her body was found half a mile from that road, tucked neatly beneath the roots of a fallen pine. No obvious trauma, no visible struggle. Her limbs were unbroken. Her body was clean. Her dress, pressed smooth, folded across her thighs. But her neck was snapped, so cleanly it looked like a surgical fracture. At the time, the coroner wrote it off as accidental. She must have fallen or slipped down the embankment, the report read. But something didn't sit right with the investigating officers. Her feet were uncut. There were no signs of crawling or tumbling. She looked placed. Just like a body prepared for a funeral. Just like a secret someone wanted to forget. Lila's death shook Ash Hollow. But soon people stopped talking. The college offered counseling. The sheriff issued a public statement. And Lila was buried with barely 100 people in attendance. But she didn't stay buried for long. Because not even a year later, reports began surfacing. April 1984. A man named Dale Renner, a janitor at Ash Hollow Elementary, claimed he was driving home when he saw a girl walking in the rain near mile marker 237. He pulled over. She looked lost, cold. She got in, said nothing, and then vanished from the seat 10 seconds later. He never reported it until 2002, when the news ran a local feature on Jason Miller's dash cam footage. "I thought I was crazy," Dale said in a recorded interview, "but when I saw that video, I knew it was her." He wasn't alone. In 1990, a delivery driver named Monica Hayes was on a late-night run to the local post office. She claimed a girl in white appeared in her rearview mirror after she passed through a dark patch of forest. Monica stopped the van, jumped out, and ran, too scared to look back. In 1997, high school senior Eric Palmer said he offered a girl a ride during a thunderstorm. She got in, stared ahead, and asked one question. "Am I safe here?" When he looked over to respond, she was gone. He never drove that road again. By the early 2000s, dozens of sightings had piled up. Some brushed off as hallucinations. Others dismissed by police. But the stories all shared chilling details. The girl was always barefoot. Her dress was white, sometimes clean, sometimes streaked with red clay. She always appeared near mile marker 237. She never spoke more than a sentence. She always disappeared without a sound. And always during or just after rainfall. But then came the stories the public never heard. Because buried in Ash Hollow's archives are 911 calls that never made the papers. One from 2003, a woman screaming that someone appeared in her car while driving alone. One from 2012, a man sobbing, claiming his daughter vanished from the back seat after picking up a stranger who looked just like her. And one from 2018, a deputy's patrol car camera catching a woman standing in the middle of the road. When he swerved to miss her, he hit a tree. The footage, lost. The report, sealed. Someone, somewhere, didn't want these cases connected. But it wasn't until 2022, when Jason Miller's dashcam footage leaked online, that the pattern became undeniable. Thousands watched, dozens commented, and slowly people from across the state began sharing stories. A nurse in Lexington, a taxi driver in Louisville, a woman from Tennessee who swore she picked up a silent girl in a soaked dress on her way to visit family near Ash Hollow. The comments all matched: the girl, the stare, the disappearance. But one message posted anonymously stood out. You think she's a ghost, but she's not. She was taken, and she won't rest until the one who did it pays. So who could that be? Investigators revisiting Lila Mae's case found something strange. Her case file was missing 2 pages. One was her autopsy sketch. The other, a hand-drawn map of her last known location, marked with an X behind the pine grove where her body was found. Why would that be removed? One theory, someone in law enforcement knew more than they admitted. Another, the killer had access to the file and wanted the trail to go cold. That trail, however, may have started to heat up again in the most unexpected place: an abandoned farmhouse 3 miles from the site of her death. Locals say the farmhouse belonged to Everett Kane, the same man questioned and quietly released after Lila's murder in 1983. The home has long since collapsed, overtaken by vines and rot. But inside, after Miller's sighting went viral, a group of urban explorers ventured in. What they found? A wall of newspaper clippings, every article about Lila Mae, every known report of a hitchhiker, and in the center, a Polaroid, a photo of a girl barefoot in a field. Her dress, white, her face, blurred. No one knows who took the photo. No one knows how long it had been there. What we're left with is a story too consistent to ignore and too terrifying to explain. Witnesses spanning decades. Sightings in the same place, under the same conditions. Physical evidence that disappears, and a death that never had a clear cause. This is no longer a ghost story. It's a case file, with patterns, with victims, and possibly with a suspect still out there. Because ghosts don't vanish with secrets, but killers do. And if the hitchhiker of Route 167 is trying to tell us something, it's that her story isn't finished, and the one who ended it is still breathing. Some stories aren't buried, they're smothered, covered over with silence, with apologies, with polite forgetfulness. But every town has a memory, and in Ash Hollow, that memory begins with Lila Mae Dawson. She was 19, smart, focused, a psychology major with a gift for understanding people. The kind of girl who stayed after class to help others study, who always said thank you to the janitor, who brought her mother wildflowers from the edge of campus every Sunday. Her world was small but full. Classes, part-time shifts at the town library, and late-night phone calls with her older sister Ava, who lived just one town over. But all of that ended on October 3rd, 1983. It started with a storm. The kind that hits with no warning. Heavy rain, winds sharp as razors, and the smell of ozone thick in the air. Power lines downed, roads flooding by the minute. Lila had borrowed her roommate's car that morning, a white 1979 Buick Century. She was heading to campus for a group project. It was a short drive, one she'd taken dozens of times. But that day, she never made it. At 10:14 a.m., a truck driver radioed in a stalled vehicle on Route 167. He described it in detail. Driver's door open, hazard lights blinking. No one around. By the time deputies arrived 30 minutes later, the car was still there. Empty, the keys still in the ignition. Lila's purse on the front seat untouched. No sign of a struggle, no blood, no footprints in the mud, no tire marks nearby. It was as if she stepped out of her car and vanished into the storm. Search parties were formed. Volunteers from Ash Hollow and neighboring towns combed the nearby woods and fields. Helicopters scanned the tree lines. Cadaver dogs were brought in. For 12 days, they found nothing. Until the 13th, October 16th. Just before sunset, a pair of hunters stumbled upon something behind a patch of pine trees less than a mile off the main road. Lila's body. She was lying on her back, arms folded neatly across her chest, as if someone had posed her. Her white dress was soaked through, clinging to her frame. Her eyes were closed, her skin pale, peaceful. But her neck snapped cleanly, and at such an angle that investigators would later say it had to have been done with force. Controlled force. Not an accident, not a fall, something intentional. Still, the cause of death was listed as undetermined. No bruises, no scratches, no signs of a struggle, and no defensive wounds. She looked untouched, almost staged. The town grieved. Her classmates lit candles at the school chapel. The library kept her nameplate on the front desk for months. Her sister Eva, devastated, publicly questioned the investigation. But behind closed doors, things got quiet. Fast. Within 2 weeks, the search was called off. The autopsy was sealed. And just like that, Lila Mae Dawson became a memory. At least, that's what the official story says. What was never made public, until now, was the suspect. His name was Everett Kane. 39 years old at the time, worked campus maintenance, never married. Lived in a small farmhouse just 3 miles from where Lila's body was found. Students had complained about him before. He lingered too long near the dorms, asked strange questions. But nothing illegal. Nothing enough to report. According to records later uncovered by retired Deputy Lawrence Coker, Everett was brought in for questioning just 3 days after Lila vanished. He had no alibi. His car matched a partial description from a witness, and his boots, found at his home, had red clay identical to the type found near Lila's resting place. But no fingerprints, no weapon, no confession. And then, he was released. A week later, Kane quit his job. A month later, he sold the farmhouse and left town. No forwarding address. No goodbye. The sheriff at the time, Thomas Greeley, closed the case with a shrug. Not enough evidence to hold him. But privately, several deputies believed that they had the right man. They just couldn't prove it. Then came the legends. Just weeks after Lila's funeral, a trucker claimed to have seen her walking along Route 167 in the pouring rain. She was barefoot, her dress was white. She didn't speak. And when he stopped to help, she was gone. At first, people dismissed it, a grief-induced hallucination, a town still raw from tragedy. But then the sightings multiplied. 1984, 1987, 1992. Always the same, a girl in white, a vanishing act, and always just before or after a storm. Some said it was Lila's spirit. Others said it was guilt echoing through the road. But a few whispered a darker theory, that Lila never found peace because her killer still walked free. And that her appearances weren't hauntings, they were warnings. In 1999, nearly 2 decades later, Lila's sister Eva returned to Ash Hollow. She'd moved away, started a family, tried to forget, but something kept pulling her back. She met with an investigative journalist named Micah Trent and handed him something that had never been entered into evidence. A journal. Lila's journal. In it, just a week before her disappearance, Lila had written about someone watching her. Someone who left strange notes near her dorm. Someone she didn't name, but referred to only as he. She wrote, "He knows my schedule. I saw him outside the library again. If I go missing, tell Ava. She'll know." The final entry? "I think he followed me today. I'm scared to walk alone." That page was dated October 2nd, 1983, 1 day before she vanished. The journal never made it into the sheriff's file. And when Micah Trent tried to publish his findings in 2000, his article was pulled before print. No explanation, no retraction, just silence. Some believe local officials buried the story to protect the town's reputation. Others believe someone made sure the truth stayed hidden because the man responsible was never far away. But the road remembers. Route 167 remembers. And so does the girl beneath the pines. Maybe her ghost appears not to scare, but to remind us of the injustice, of the silence, of the open door that should have been locked. She's not just a haunting. She's a case file, a question, a story that refuses to stay buried. And maybe, just maybe, she's waiting for someone to finish what she never could. Most the story ends at the grave. For others, it ends when the last news article fades from memory, or when the final witness stops talking. But in Ash Hollow, the story hasn't ended. It keeps resurfacing every few years, every storm, every time another driver looks into the rearview mirror and sees something that shouldn't be there. Something or someone still walking that lonely stretch of Route 167. But what if it's not just a ghost? What if it's something deeper, something darker? Because the sightings aren't random. They follow a pattern. And the evidence suggests this is more than just folklore. Since 1983, over 47 documented sightings have been reported between mile markers 235 and 239. Truckers, locals, out-of-state tourists, police officers, all describing the same thing: a young woman in a white dress, soaking wet, barefoot, silent. Every single encounter occurred at night, 35 of them during or just after rainfall, and 19 on the exact same date. October 3rd, the anniversary of Lila Mae Dawson's disappearance. Coincidence? That's what skeptics claim. But for paranormal investigators, those numbers are a signal, not just of a haunting, but of a phenomenon with purpose. In 2023, a team from the Kentucky Paranormal Institute visited Ash Hollow to conduct an independent investigation. They brought EMF scanners, motion sensors, thermal cameras, and a full-spectrum drone to monitor atmospheric anomalies along Route 167. They were skeptical at first. Most cases like this turn out to be nothing more than folklore, fed by small-town whispers. But on the second night, they got more than they bargained for. At 2:12 a.m., just past mile marker 237, the drone camera picked up a heat signature walking along the shoulder. Human-shaped, but cold. Not low, cold. The team pulled over, scrambled with handheld cameras, but saw nothing with the naked eye. When they replayed the footage, a figure could be seen clearly for 12 full seconds, walking upright, dress swaying in the wind, arms stiff at her sides. Then in a blink, she was gone. The thermal data showed something impossible. The temperature around the figure was 9 degrees colder than the surrounding air. That shouldn't happen in open space, unless something was drawing in energy. Lead investigator Marla Rhodes said this on record. This isn't just residual energy. It's intelligent. It's deliberate. Whatever's out here, ghost or otherwise, it wants to be seen, but only by those who are alone, those who are vulnerable. She's not trapped. She's watching. They left after 48 hours. No further comment. But the footage was leaked online. And once again, the hitchhiker was back in the public eye. That's when the skeptics stepped in. Dr. Ethan Merrick, a psychologist and well-known debunker of paranormal events, offered a different theory. What's happening in Ash Hollow is a form of mass suggestion. The legend becomes so well known, it embeds itself in the minds of the locals and travelers alike. So when a person is tired, alone, and driving through a dark forest during a storm, their brain fills in the blanks. The ghost isn't real. The fear is. He cites confirmation bias, sleep deprivation, cultural imprinting. But what Dr. Merrick fails to explain is the footage. The dash cam, the drone, the 911 calls, and the physical evidence, like the Polaroid photo found inside Everett Kane's abandoned home. Or the hand-drawn map recovered from a library book that Lila May had checked out just days before she died. A map that leads straight to where her body was found. No hallucination plants a map in a sealed archive. No shared delusion snaps a neck cleanly and places the body like a porcelain doll. Others take it even further. A small but growing group of researchers believe that the girl on Route 167 isn't a ghost at all, but something called an echo entity. It's a controversial theory that suggests when a person dies in extreme fear, trauma, or betrayal, their emotional imprint can echo across time. Not a soul, but a scar in the fabric of reality. These entities don't think, don't feel, but they repeat. They show up under the same conditions, acting out the moment they died, over and over again. But in Lila May's case, something's off. She doesn't just repeat. Sometimes she reacts. One witness said she turned her head and looked him in the eye before vanishing. Another said she mouthed the word no when he tried to ask if she was hurt. These aren't the behaviors of a mindless echo. These are signs of memory, of motive, of warning. Then there's the incident in 2024. A man named Paul Jenkins, driving from Lexington to visit his sister in Ash Hollow, called 911 after swerving off the road and hitting a ditch. He claimed he saw a girl walking directly in front of his car. But when officers arrived, they found something even more bizarre. Paul's car was stopped a full 30 feet from the ditch, the engine off, headlights blinking, the front bumper completely clean. But inside the car on the passenger seat was a single red clay footprint, facing inward, as if someone had stepped in and then disappeared. Ash Hollow's current sheriff, Kendra Boyd, refuses to comment publicly. But off record, she's told reporters she keeps a file labeled simply 167 Ghost Girl. Inside are photographs, sworn statements, and a single quote she wrote by hand. Some cases don't need evidence. They need closure. So far, no one's given her that. So what do we make of all this? We have a woman, Lila May Dawson, murdered under mysterious circumstances. A suspect, Everett Kane, who vanished without a trace. A string of unexplained sightings on the same stretch of road, matching the exact conditions of her death. Footage that shows a figure, data that shows temperature drops, evidence that doesn't fit any logical narrative, and a town that can't stop looking over its shoulder. This is more than folklore, more than a ghost story. It's an active case. A series of messages from the other side, or from within a wound that refuses to heal. Maybe she's not stuck between worlds. Maybe she's stuck in ours. Not by choice, but by silence. Because someone somewhere buried more than just a body in 1983. They buried the truth. And now it walks Route 167, searching for someone who will finally listen. The road that never lets go. There's a moment, just before dawn, when the fog lifts, the trees still, and the road seems to breathe. It's quiet. Too quiet. And that's when she appears. Not always in the headlights. Not always by the shoulder. Sometimes, she's already inside the car. And if you ask where she's going, she might whisper the same thing she's whispered for 40 years. I never left. There are stories you tell to scare children. There are stories you whisper because you're afraid they might be true. But the story of Route 167 is different. Because it isn't told, it's felt. In the pit of your stomach, in the crackle of static on your radio, in the chill that crawls down your spine when you pass mile marker 237. Something happened on this road. Something evil. And it left more than just a spirit behind. It left a mark. Let's go back, one last time, to the girl with the white dress, to the keys left in the ignition, to the clean body, laid out like a ritual, arms folded, eyes closed, mouth sealed. Lila May Dawson. They tried to write her off as a victim of circumstance. They called it an accident, a disappearance, a storm-struck tragedy. But when you look at everything we've covered in this documentary, the sightings, the witness statements, the thermal drone footage, the journal, the footprint, the map, it doesn't read like a haunting. It reads like a cover-up. Someone did this to her. Someone who was never caught. Someone who wanted her forgotten. But Lila didn't stay quiet. She walked back into our world, again, and again, and again. In 2025, a podcast episode covering the Hitchhiker case went viral. A new generation heard Lila's name for the first time. Some mocked it, others were intrigued. But among the comments, one anonymous reply stood out. "I see her every October. She waits, doesn't speak, just watches. I think she's waiting for someone who never came back." What if that's true? What if she's not trying to scare us, but find someone? What if the man who hurt her, who killed her, promised he'd come back, and she's still waiting, still hoping, still watching? But here's the part that stays with you. Many believe the haunting will stop when justice is served, when her story is heard, when the truth is pulled from the dirt where it was buried. But what if she's not just haunting a road? What if she's haunting us for forgetting, for staying silent, for driving past her one too many times? A psychic investigator named Carmen Valdez visited Route 167 last year. She stood alone on mile marker 237 at midnight. She recorded herself, eyes closed, whispering Lila's name. She said she felt something, not like a spirit, but a pull. It wasn't sadness, she said. It was betrayal. She wants someone to answer for what happened. And until then, she'll never leave. A few months later, Carmen went public, sharing a sketch she drew from a vision she claimed to have seen. The face? It wasn't Lila's. It was a man's. Familiar, tired, his eyes hollow. We tried to match it to old faculty records from Ash Hollow College, and there, in a 1983 yearbook, under the facility's staff page, was Everett Kane. Same eyes, same tired face, same scar above his lip. Is that who she's looking for? Is that the one who made her stay? The farmhouse where Kane once lived has since collapsed. Nothing remains but foundation stones, rusted tools, and burned papers. But just behind the crumbling shed, something was recently uncovered. A second Polaroid. Water damaged, curled at the edges, but visible. A white dress, red clay, and writing on the back. 4 words. "You left me here." It's unclear who wrote it, or why it was never submitted into evidence. But what matters is that it exists. Proof. A voice from the grave. A message from a girl who was never meant to vanish. Now here's where we leave you. With a road that's still there. A story still unfolding. And a question no one has answered in 42 years. What does Lila want? Justice? Peace? Or simply to be remembered? Maybe she doesn't want revenge. Maybe she just wants to be seen, heard, known. Because every time someone tells her story, she gets closer to leaving. So if you find yourself on Route 167 during a storm, and you see a girl in white standing at the side of the road, don't stop, but don't look away. Because she might just be trying to tell you something. Something you were never supposed to know. If this story moved you, if Lila's voice reached through the screen and chilled your bones, we ask just one thing. Don't let her be forgotten. Share this video. Let others know her name. And if you're drawn to the unknown like we are, if you crave the stories that hide in shadows, then join us. Like, comment, and subscribe to the Untold Trace. Untold. Turn on notifications so you never miss a case. And dive into our other documentaries uncovering the darkest, most mysterious corners of our world. Because stories like this don't die, not unless we let them. And some roads never let go.